Welcome to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. Legal issues simplified through real client stories and real-world experiences. Creating simplicity in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to another episode of Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd.
As a business and healthcare law firm, we represent clients in multiple sectors and multiple specialties. This season, we are searching for common ground for our diverse audience. And we'll be bringing in many guests to help us, Brad.
Yes, that we will.
This season's theme is the universal language, business.
Yes, and I'm excited for today's guest. He has a background that's extremely unique, and especially as it relates to this new modern currency.
Well, I thought you were going to acknowledge the fact that our guest today, you went to college together, and I'm guessing that the stuff he has on you is legendary.
You know, I would say, Michael, what happened in college, especially at TCU, go Frogs, stays in college. Like all my college friends, Les and I have an understanding. We have a nuclear stalemate. If our guest goes there, I will go there. But we won't go there yet. Let's hold off before we bring our guest. I have a question for you now, though. Do you like scary movies?
Well, first of all, let's stay away from the red button. I might actually get blown up, too. I don't want to do that. And actually, no, I don't like scary movies. Oh. Why are you asking about that?
Well, okay. So growing up in New Orleans, as you know, most of the city is below sea level. And because of that, the graves have to be above ground. So the reason being that with the high water table, if it rained really hard and you bury Grandma, she might float up and float by your house one day. So they built all the tombs above ground. And as kids, we would go to these cemeteries, play hide and seek, sometimes in the daylight, sometimes in the dark, but it got pretty spooky in there.
Yeah, and I guess it never occurred to you that you didn't have to be scared, but if you just didn't go play hide and seek in the cemetery.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well,
some of these cemeteries have these giant mausoleums. They're so large they actually have a gate and walkway into it where all the family members are buried. Some have these huge sealed doors on them, and obviously it allows your imagination to kind of go with it. And which so this fear of the unknown, what was behind the wall, started making people's imagination go wild. Which we have an entire series of books, of horror books written all in New Orleans. You might have heard a few of them, like Interview with the Vampire.
If I remember right, weren't you neighbors with the author of that?
I was.
Yeah,
that's right.
Okay, well, so where are you going with all this?
All right, so the unknown has always led to fear, allowing our minds to create these monsters and boogeymen. And so there's a gap between what's real reality and the myth that creates it. So today's guest is constantly challenged the mythical roadblocks of moving into uncharted waters as relates to many different industries, including cryptocurrency or crypto. And he was an early adopter of analyzing this new type of currency, specifically Bitcoin.
So I think I just heard you say, are we having the Loch Ness Monster on as a guest?
Yes.
And is Nessie as a pioneer in crypto?
Yes, Nessie is.
Okay.
With a Scottish accent.
Okay. Yeah, of course, Scotland. I knew I'd get you there. Wow. Okay. Well, I think you actually hit a vocabulary word, cryptocurrency. That sounds kind of scary.
Yeah.
So we'll find out what our guest has to say. But according to Siri, our research assistant,
she's awesome.
Cryptocurrency is a digital currency designed to work as a medium of exchange through a computer network that's not reliant on any central authority, such as a government or a bank.
Awesome. Good catch. Yeah, when we have vocabularies, we have to define it. Michael, let's bring on Les.
So Leslie Wayne Kreis, Les, has been 25 years investment experience across many different financial instruments, both global public and private equity markets. Les is a principal at Steelhead Capital Management based in Fort Worth. Steelhead manages a portfolio of small business investments and startup ventures. He's the managing partner and co-founder of BIOS Equity Partners, LP. He's a founding member of Cowtown Angels, a Fort Worth-based angel investment network. He was a vice president at HBK Investments. He, as you mentioned, Brad, went to TCU. He was a finance major, graduated in 1994. This is actually shouldn't be on his bio because it's actually a negative, but he knows you going back to college. And I do have to say, Brad, that Les and I met not long after you came to Dallas. So Les and I have known each other for a long time now. And we always play the name game. What's our common connection? And Les, for the only time in my life, our common connection is my mom. He knew my mom before he and I knew each other. And so, and I'm not competitive, Les, but I just have to say and acknowledge I've known her longer.
Well, welcome, Les.
Well, it's great to be here. I'd like to say that if I was picking myself as a monster, I'd probably choose like Wolfman or something. Nessie does not sound like a monster that I would want to be. Right? No.
Yeah, it's not you. It's Brad. Scotland. I mean, he just can't not go for Nessie, I think.
I mean, yeah. I mean, everyone knows Nessie has a good Scottish accent.
Okay, all right. We're gonna have to move into talking about you, Lester. We'll lose Brad for sure right now. So gave a brief background, but I'd love to just hear kind of your professional story for the audience's benefit of kind of your background.
Okay. Well, I graduated from TCU in '94 with Brad. And by the way, Brad, it's really actually interesting to hear your radio voice, Brad, because I know a bunch of different voices, but not radio voice.
I do too. We should start a podcast on Brad.
So, I kind of was a little bit of an entrepreneur most of my life. Before college, I had a lawn mowing company, and a buddy of mine, we'd go mow lawns. And in college, I worked for Rent-A-Frog, parking cars, and because I wanted a little extra money.
By the way, Les got me into Rent-A-Frog.
Wanted to park cars and have a little extra money so I could buy a little bit more quality beer or something like that.
Yes, exactly.
Sounds reasonable.
Everybody was drinking the Keystone Lights, right? And I wanted Miller Lite. Right?
Yeah, we were rich.
Yeah, I was lucky to get some good internships. I sort of feel like one of the keys to really learning how to do business is experiential learning. And, I didn't set out that way, but I also was, I was guided to, get internships so that, you can actually talk about something relevant in your interviews. And so I'd worked down in Smith Barney one summer with a friend of mine named Mark Hart, who runs a hedge fund in Fort Worth, Corriente Capital. And we worked for Smith Barney. I think it was like Smith Barney Shearson. It was like had a bunch of names. It went changed like 3 names while we were there over a summer. And we were just kind of working with a trading group, learning finance, learning trading, and it was fantastic. But we didn't get paid a dime. So I had credit card debt like crazy after that summer, and then came back my senior year and. Had a really interesting situation where one of the CFO of a hedge fund that was started in Fort Worth stood up one day in one of the classes I was at in TCU and said, we're having an internship if anybody's interested. And so, I got the job, working for this hedge fund in Fort Worth called HBK Investments. And I was working in the back office and just helping clear trades and, do reconciliations where you literally get a fax every day that was like, okay, well.
Hold on. We might have to define what a fax is for our audience.
It was a stack of papers that was said like, okay, well, the bank, this custodian knows you have this many shares. And then you looked at your portfolio management system and you say, okay, yeah, 10,000 shares of IBM, check. You just did it by hand. Now it's all automated, but literally you had to do that by hand. And so that's one of my first jobs, working before I actually graduated. But I did not like working in the back office. And so I eventually worked my way out to the front office, as they called it, and then started working with the traders and kind of helping do things. And they liked what I did and offered me a job, I guess it was around February of my senior year in college. And so I was just, really blessed to have had that lined up, to not have to go through the interview process. And ended up working there for 11 years. Most of what I did was convertible bond arbitrage. Towards the end, I was managing the global portfolio. So, we traded in pretty much every market in the world, but, we had offices in Tokyo, London, and Dallas. The firm moved from Fort Worth to Dallas in 98. I got a chance to go live in London with the firm and help another guy open up the London office in 1997, and that was an amazing experience. But most of what I did was work for a fund that, I guess the value that a fund like that provides to the market is it provides liquidity to the overall financial markets. And so we would get paid. And most of what we did were arbitrage type strategies.
I think Brad needs to spell arbitrage.
No way. Not happening.
That sounds really fancy. So tell me how you went from that. I mean, when I say fancy, I mean that's pretty sophisticated stuff right out of school for 11 years. And so talk to us about the jumping off point from that. And I guess you went on your own at that point, right?
Yeah, I did. I kind of got to the point where I kind of hit the glass ceiling at HBK, and HBK was in a wonderful place, and my aspirations were maybe a little bit greater than what the opportunity was for me at the time, and so I made the very difficult decision to leave and give that up for the unknown, and it is jumping off. I mean, it was a very big risk. I really had no idea what I was doing, and I kind of switched from public markets to private markets, and I just they're similar but so different, right? And I just had no idea what I was doing. So I spent a lot of years making a lot of mistakes trying to figure out how to do this private side. And Brad and I actually worked together. I think Brad actually did the formation docs for Steelhead Capital. So so I spent a bunch of years trying to figure out how to do the private side of the business. I went and saw a mentor as in this process who kind of guided me towards being in the oil and gas business. At the time, this was 2005. So at the time, there was something going on in the energy business, and it was sitting right underneath us. It was, they discovered how to do the slickwater frac process in the Barnett Shale. And so I started doing a bunch of stuff in and around the Barnett Shale oil and gas, and made a lot of mistakes in that area, but got involved in various companies in various different roles, from never really being a CEO, but helping operate these businesses, to being just a capital partner in some way, and just trying to feel my way through it. Got the opportunity to start up an angel network in Fort Worth, and this was 2012, with several other people. And in that process, there was one other woman there. She was working at Alcon for 25 years and kind of took early retirement and didn't really want to quit working. And her name is Dr. Stella Robertson, and she was part of this group that formed Cowtown Angels. And so we noticed that there was just a bunch of biotech companies that were coming through the angel networks that were too small for like big venture capital firms, but they were too complicated for the angel investor. The angel investors are like me. They're typically finance guys that, they don't know anything about science, and you just don't really always invest in things that you don't understand. And you look at a pharma deal, and that kind of tech is really complicated, but complicated creates opportunity, and that's something that I learned at working for the hedge fund. Is we did mostly derivatives arbitrage. So you just take a complicated security and figure out how to take advantage of the mispricings that go along with that complication. So in this particular case, we saw a bunch of biotech firms come through, and so Stella and I started kind of working together on one or several, and we found another person that was real interested, and we sort of started doing these little club deals where we would, find an interesting opportunity that came through, Cowtown Angels. They needed a lot more money than what that angel group would do, and so we would provide that, by putting a little bit more of a institutional process into the investing side of it, and that turned into being a good thing. And we probably raised about $15 million doing these little club deals. And one of the deals that we did was a deal that was in an eye drop company, or a company that made an eye drop to solve presbyopia, which is the inability to see near objects. And
it's what requires us old 50-year-olds to have readers.
Yeah.
Speak for yourself. Of course, I'm blind the other way, but
Yes.
we won't talk about that. Did they have a drop for that?
They have a drop for everything. These drops help with eyesight, and they actually had really good clinical success. And so we were able to then turn around and sell that to Novartis in 2017. And then that gave us the ability to kind of launch a real fund that was kind of a blind pool fund. And so we did that and deployed it. It was I think it was like a $25 million fund. And it actually was a $25 million fund, and we were taking advantage of the qualified small business stock exemption because we had basically, I think it was 60 days to basically redeploy the capital that we had originally invested in Encore Vision, because you get basically the greater of 10 times your investment or $10 million tax-free using qualified small business stock exemption. But if you don't eclipse 5 years on the investment, then you got to roll that into something within 60 days. So there's I think it's called a 1031 exchange. Not 1031, that's a real estate.
A real estate one,
it's like a 1065 or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was, we had to basically deploy that capital, and we ended up redeploying about $25 million into 7 companies in 60 days. Now we knew, 4 of them were companies that we already, had been working on and invested in, and then there was 3 that we had been working with. So it wasn't, but it was 7 companies that we closed on in 60 days. It was pretty crazy. So we did that fund. Then when that gave us the ability to sort of launch another fund, and we raised and deployed $50 million in Fund 2, and then we're in the middle of deploying Fund 3 right now, and it's a $150 million commitment fund, and so we're about halfway through that. And I guess with if you add up all the sidecars and everything, Bios Partners, which is the name of this firm, is around $350 million in AUM.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it turned into a real deal.
So you start off at HBK. Actually, it sounds like almost opening the mail because you're reading the faxes. So we won't ask you about what you learned besides paper cuts there. But when you worked at HBK, you're working on some really big public ventures, and then you move over and you start your own venture firm, which is more on the private side. What are some of these common themes that you started noticing that you learned from HBK that you can also actually you're applying at your new firm?
Well, I mean, that was one of the prep questions, so I knew in advance, and I've been thinking about this, and it's something that became very clear, as I was thinking through this. And we talked earlier about when I left HBK, I was leaping off a cliff, and it was crazy because I had a good job and basically gave that up. I learned I didn't know what I knew, right? What I didn't know was that I was working with some of the smartest, most efficient people, in business. And, we would sit around and debate what cell phone was the best, and you were just working with really smart people. And so everything was all about getting to the truth and getting there efficiently, right? And so I think what I really learned that I didn't know that I learned was how to be an entrepreneur, because it was all about solving problems, right? Being an entrepreneur, honestly, is about solving problems, right? So if you go to like an incubator, right? An incubator is going to, is there to teach entrepreneurs, right? But they're there to teach entrepreneurs because nobody knows how to do all the business school disciplines: accounting, finance, marketing, management, maybe IT, right? Nobody knows how to do all of that really well. So you go to an incubator to figure out how to do a marketing plan to go pitch and raise money, or how to put a budget together, so you can, not lose money. Like that's what an incubator does. And so like nobody knows how to be an entrepreneur, but entrepreneurship is it's almost philosophical. You can't teach it. You have to learn it through experiential learning. But it really is centered philosophically around problem solving. And so what I learned at HBK was how to solve problems efficiently and quick, And so, we would be running arbitrage. So you would be looking at a convertible bond, and you would need to know, like, it's very specific. So you'd have to pull up the bond indenture and go through it and find like exactly how the rules work for everything. Like if you converted the bonds, you're going to receive stock, but contractually the company has to give you stock within a certain amount of time. And so you were figuring out maybe how to arbitrage a situation where you bought a bond and you put it in for conversion and you got the stock back, but then you had to sell that stock and maybe you were selling it on a different exchange and they had different rules. So you had to create an ADR out of a foreign stock, and what were the rules on that? So
makes my head spin less.
It was literally an exercise in solving problems constantly, right? And I think that prepared me to be an entrepreneur investor. So when I went out, I made a lot of mistakes because I didn't know private equity very well. But I knew how to be more of an entrepreneur investor at that point. And I think that's what HBK taught me was, how to be an entrepreneur. There's certainly not a sign that says you'll learn how to be an entrepreneur, but that there's no question that's what I learned.
That's funny because we had another entrepreneur on, and one of the things he said is similar was that, the mistakes he made, now that he knows he made those mistakes. But I think that's the deal is when you don't know it, hopefully as I know you've said this before, you learn from them.
Yep.
And then you don't make the mistake again.
Yep.
So let's jump ahead because I know we brought you on here to talk about cryptocurrency and really talk about Bitcoin. And I can remember having lunch with you in Fort Worth. I don't remember how many years ago now. And you're like, hey, there's this new thing called Bitcoin and you should invest some money in it. And audience, I will let you know I did not invest nearly enough in it. But Les was really big on it. And if you hang out with Les long enough, I did buy some, but not enough.
I think I told you to put $100 into it.
You did. I'll, for the audience, I actually put more. I won't share, but I just decided I wanted to feel a little bit more teeth into it, which now I wish I put a lot more in.
Well, I would say that if anybody is wanting to learn more about it, you have to put some amount. My amount that I always tell someone is $100 because if you don't do that, you won't check the price on it regularly, and then you won't be open to more information about it. Yeah. And it's the difference between the people that actually go out and put some skin in the game, and talking about a little bit. Yeah. Is night and day in what they learn.
Let's tell the audience what is Bitcoin.
Bitcoin, I think, this would be a 10 podcast episode,
sure.
Right? But I would say the easiest way that I can explain Bitcoin is what they have discovered is digital scarcity.
Yeah.
So that's what they've discovered. It is a discovery. It's they've discovered a way to create digital scarcity that doesn't require trust that what you have in your account is what you have. It's trustless, right?
Right.
And so that's the game changer is they've created something that's digitally scarce. And you look at it in a very similar way that you might look at gold, right? Like why is gold so important? Gold is important because we've used it as a society, human society to communicate value. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when you work, right, you get paid, right? And so you store that value that you get paid, which represents your time value, right? You store that in something, right? Mm-hmm. It could be gold, it could be a currency, it could be bonds, whatever, but you work and you create time value, your time value, and you got to store that in some way. So then you can use it to communicate something like you need chickens, right? So you give some money for chickens. So you don't have to basically trade cows for chickens, basically, right? So there's a point to money is really about communication, right? So, gold has been what humans have kind of gone back to over and over and over to restart an economy that basically blows itself up. Mm-hmm. But emperors and, people that have controlled economies they start off with gold, right? Or some gold-backed system. And then they're like, oh, but if we just put a little, copper in it, then we don't have to use as much gold, and they dilute it, right? And that's been done for, millennia, right? Mm-hmm. And you always go back to gold because it is the most scarce asset on the planet that everybody values in a way and has consistently valued over time, right? Mm-hmm. So we've used gold in that way for a really long time. For anybody that would want to learn more about this fundamental reason why Bitcoin is important and is like gold in that regard, I'd recommend you read the book, The Bitcoin Standard. And I'm going to mess the author. He's a Lebanese economist, Safety Animous, and I know I've butchered his name.
And for our audience, what we'll do is we'll find it and we'll drop it in the notes, the link, so that they can find it.
This book was the epiphany for me because he explained why gold has been so important to human evolvement for so long, right? In terms of having this basis of value that we can communicate on, right? You may speak, Italian and I speak French, but I can give you gold for your chickens, and we can agree that is a good exchange, right? It's just a way to communicate.
Yeah.
So we live in a digital world now. And so, gold is not very portable. It's not very divisible. There's a lot of things that gold cannot do. If you wanted to store a certain amount of it, you have to centralize it. And so somebody can come and seize that, So there is a problem with that in today's modern age, right? And Bitcoin has the scarcity component similar to gold, but it's got all these other properties. Like one Bitcoin is divisible into 100 million units. So one 100 millionth of a unit is much less than a penny, right?
Right.
And it's that way because Bitcoin hopefully will appreciate, but you also want to be able to do microtransactions with it. But go try to take a gold down, 1 ounce coin and shave a little bit off and buy something with it, right? I mean, you can see the limitations that you have in the digital world here, right? So the point of this is to say that it is important to have a hard money system, and gold has been a hard money monetary system. But we are no longer in the analog world. We are in the digital world, and we need a digital asset that can meet our digital needs. Gold can't do that. It can in the sense that if you can centralize it at some bank, and then they can issue deposit receipts for it, but then it still can be co-opted, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what Bitcoin is representing. It represents sort of the new modern hard money system that we may need to go to in the world where we live in 350, 400% debt to GDP.
That's amazing. And I'll say this, it's very humbling listening to you. I'm used to being the smartest man in the room when I'm with Brad, and I'm definitely not that today. But I'm happy to hear a little bit of Texan come out. You did talk about chickens, and I picked up on that. And
Chicken
cows.
and
Yes. So
everybody, he's from Fort Worth, Texas. That's where the West starts.
Yep, exactly. Well, this has been fascinating, and as always, and we're so grateful to have you on. It flew by like that. I feel like we could talk for another hour easily. And so what we'll do next is we'll say goodbye, and then we'll come back on the other side and do a quick little wrap up. Yeah.
Well, Les, this is awesome. As you said, we probably could do a 10-part series on Bitcoin itself, getting into all the other pieces. But thank you so much for coming out today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Many business owners use legal counsel as a last resort rather than as a proactive tool that can further their success. Why? For most, it's the fear of unknown legal costs. ByrdAdatto's Access Plus program makes it possible for you to get the ongoing legal assistance you need for one predictable monthly fee. That gives you unlimited phone and email access to the legal team, so you can receive feedback on legal concerns as they arise. Access Plus, a smarter, simpler way to access legal services. Find out more. Visit ByrdAdatto.com today.
Welcome back to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto. I'm still here with my co-host, Michael Byrd. Now, Michael, this season, as we talked about before, we're searching for this common ground. Our theme is the universal language, business. And we just had Les Kreis in here, who has his own VC firm. And he talked about, so many fascinating aspects of running a business. And obviously, we got into Bitcoin. But one of the things I thought that Les said was so smart as being an entrepreneur is really understanding what you know and understanding what you don't know. And maybe you can jump in on that thought.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, all of our audience, all of our clients are entrepreneurs, whether they think they are or not. I mean, we think we are, so we always say it.
Yes,
but we are. I mean, if you're starting and running a business, as a small business owner, you're an entrepreneur. And what Les said was so smart. He talked about these incubators and learning the different disciplines of running a business. The challenge about a small business is that you, by definition, are usually having one or two owners in the business, and you have certain things. Everyone has certain things that are strong skill sets and things that there are weaknesses. And Les mentioned building a team. And I think just from observation and representing our clients, those that do well are the ones who identify areas where they need to bring outside team members in.
Yes.
And it could be a marketing team. It could be legal.
Yeah.
It could be, accounting or finance, et cetera. I mean, Les clearly is a financial wizard. And so he's got that covered, but he's going to need help perhaps in some of the other disciplines. And so I think a lot of entrepreneurs fall into the trap of trying to be everything for the business, and they end up doing nothing well.
Right, and I think we've talked about this other episodes about scaling. You can't scale if it's just you, and you can't duplicate just you, unless of course you clone yourself, which we'd have to do a whole new show on that. But Michael, I think that's it for the day. But guess what, audience? Next Wednesday we have another awesome guest. This is another guest who has been with us in the past. Tim Sawyer is going to show up, and he's going to talk about something awesome that happened in his life since the last time he was on our show. Thanks again for joining us today. And remember, if you like this episode, please subscribe. Make sure to give us a 5-star rating and share with your friends.
You can also sign up for the ByrdAdatto newsletter by going to our website at ByrdAdatto.com.
ByrdAdatto is providing this podcast as a public service. This podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast does not constitute legal advice, nor does it establish an attorney-client relationship. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by ByrdAdatto. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Please consult with an attorney on your legal issues.